Welcome to another video. Excuse me. My name is Pedro Rodrigues Ribeiro. I'm a psychologist, and in this video I would like to talk a little about the myths of Ericksonian approach to hypnosis and psychotherapy. So these myths are just some of my ideas. They are not in a specific order. I'm just spitballing. I'm just talking about what comes to my mind at the moment, so no script. But the Ericksonian approach to hypnosis and psychotherapy is a very popular one amongst Ericksonians, and to everyone wants to learn hypnosis, especially hypnosis, because Milton Erickson in some ways revolutionized the way that we do hypnosis. Some of the most established theorists and researchers say that Ericksonian approach and what Erickson did was not exactly hypnosis. It was more like a suggestive style approach to therapy. But if you think about it, hypnosis is suggestion. So what Milton Erickson did was an evolution, was something different, especially in the later years of his career. What a popular approach always brings are myths and misconceptions. So I'm gonna talk about some of the myths that surrounds the Ericksonian approach. One myth is that the Ericksonian approach to hypnosis is more effective, more powerful than a traditional style or semi-traditional style of hypnosis. This is a myth because research on hypnotic suggestibility and hypnotic suggestions confronted indirect suggestions, permissive suggestions versus direct suggestions. Permissive and indirect style are a trademark of the Ericksonian approach. The direct style is a trademark of traditional and semi-traditional ways of doing hypnosis. The studies that exist on efficacy, on suggestion efficacy, proves that there isn't a statistical significance difference between indirect suggestions or direct suggestions. So both of them are equally strong and equally reliable. What direct suggestion does is address the symptom directly and more rapidly. The indirect style or the indirect suggestion or permissive suggestion helps to build the therapeutic relationship, to make it stronger. In nowadays, one of the views of hypnosis is truly to mix direct suggestions with indirect and permissive suggestions. So you can mix the styles, and it makes sense if you think about having flexibility and the different characteristics of the patients you see. Some patients can be more adequate to a direct style of suggestions. Some of them will respond better to indirect or permissive style of suggestions. It all depends on the characteristics of the patient, but also the characteristics of the therapist. Not everyone knows or are trained in the Ericksonian approach. In that sense, the claims that the Ericksonians have about the efficacy of the Ericksonian approach versus traditional and semi-traditional styles of hypnosis, what intends to suggestion, are a myth. Both styles are equally effective. Another myth is that the Ericksonian approach to hypnosis and psychotherapy is a model. It's not a model. It's not a therapy or a therapeutic model like cognitive therapy, like behavioral therapy, like psychoanalysis. What it is the ideas and the approach of one man, Milton Erickson, that practice a certain style of therapy and a certain style of hypnosis. Along the way, he had a lot of students that learned from him not only his ideas but some of his style, and they integrated that information and they interpreted what they learned and what they saw. That's why you have various thoughts or various different or various different styles or views of the Ericksonian approach. It depends on the student. It depends on the person that writes and conceptualizes what he believes to be the Ericksonian approach. But the Ericksonian approach to hypnosis and psychotherapy is not a therapeutic model. There is no manual, no standardized manual, no research-based proceedings to validate it as a experience model. So the Ericksonian approach is more like a philosophy or a way of doing, of thinking and doing therapy. Another myth is that Milton Erickson was always effective, and that's a myth. Milton Erickson was a very effective therapist. I would say one of the most effective therapists along the history, such as Fritz Perls or Virginia Satir, or other more recent therapy masters like Leslie Greenberg, like Diana Fosche, like Arnold Lazarus, like Nancy McWilliams, etc. So along the years and the history of psychotherapy, there were a lot of effective therapists, and still are. So they still exist. Milton Erickson was, without a doubt, one of the most effective. However, even Milton Erickson had cases that he couldn't resolve, he couldn't crack, he couldn't help the person. Bill O'Halloran made a beautiful effort in demonstrating some of the cases that were not so successful in his book, Uncommon Casebook. There are a lot of cases that Erickson wasn't successful. So even the master therapist, the most effective therapist, fails because you can't have 100% efficacy all the time with everyone. That's impossible. Even the legends can fail and do fail. So that's a myth. Another myth, or mostly it's not a myth, but it's a condition, that Milton Erickson could hypnotize everyone. If you review the cases that Milton Erickson wasn't successful, some of them are in terms of suggestion in his style of therapy. And I would like to remark that Milton Erickson, especially in the latest years of his career, especially after Uncommon Therapy by Jay Haley and the popularity that Grinder and Bandler helped with the reputation of Erickson. After those years, everyone wanted to be treated by Milton Erickson. So everyone expected not only to be treated but also to be hypnotized. When someone arrived at Erickson's private practice, his home, and he knew who was Erickson and what to expect, you can be sure that hypnotizing someone in that with those conditions, it's really easy. And so social cognitive therapists or cognitive behavioral therapists can explain that one of the reasons why those people were hypnotized is in response to authority, because they recognize Erickson's authority as a therapist, as a hypnotist, as an effective therapist. Also, the conditions were that it was Erickson. If Erickson said a suggestion or told a story or told a metaphor, I would say 60% of the patients enter hypnosis easily. It was a social thing. So I believe that Erickson could hypnotize someone only by his reputation. Another myth is that Erickson only did hypnosis as a way of therapy. And that's a myth because Erickson didn't utilize hypnosis as much as someone would believe. At least the formal process of hypnosis, he would tell a lot of stories, he would tell a lot of metaphors, he would tell a lot of analogies, he would tell a lot of experiences on things that would happen in life and faces that the patient had passed and learned with it. So he would tell a lot of stories. If that hypnotized someone, well, it might be, but he didn't utilize hypnosis in all the cases. He also did things like paradoxical interventions, like prescribing homework or tasks. he was very direct, and he would rely in his knowledge as a physician also. So a lot of Erickson's interventions, were mixed between strategic thinking, paradoxical intervention, prescribing tasks, or other things, utilizing what was needed and what worked, and also hypnosis. So Erickson did a lot of things. Another myth is that Ericksonian hypnosis is only hypnosis. That's another myth that is aligned with what I previous said. And the reason is that nowadays a lot of institutes, a lot of courses, a lot of people claim to be Ericksonian and claim to teach the Ericksonian approach, but really what they do is only teach a permissive and indirect style of hypnosis, and that's only a small part of the Ericksonian approach to hypnosis and psychotherapy. The Ericksonian approach has a lot of things that are way beyond hypnosis. If you are curious about the Ericksonian approach, you can read the books by Jeffrey Zeig and the books on Bill O'Halloran, and also the material of Michael Yapko. They summarize a well-based Ericksonian approach, a way of conceptualizing the Ericksonian approach. And so the Ericksonian approach to hypnosis and psychotherapy is more than only hypnosis. Another myth is that it is aligned with the legendary handshake. So if you know something about hypnosis, especially the rapid inductions, and especially the most visual and striking inductions, you might encounter a lot of inductions that are based on a handshake or pattern interrupt, utilizing the handshake movement. And for a lot of years, one of those handshakes was credited to Erickson. The induction where the hand was straight in front of the person. As someone was shaking, the hypnotist would stop the movement, grab softly the hand, and moved into this position. That induction was famously attributed to Erickson. However, this particular induction was developed and created by Richard Bandler, the co-creator of NLP. Bandler, in one of his videos, in one of his sessions, he let people think that this was really Erickson, but in reality, the pattern interrupt, the style of induction, was created by Richard Bandler. Erickson never did these types of handshake inductions. What Erickson did was what is called the ambiguous touch. Erickson, as I mentioned in other videos, suffered from polio. Polio was a disease that affected. Sorry about that. A lot of organs and a lot of body parts of Milton Erickson, including his arms and the strength of his arms. In later years, he couldn't have the strength, the grip to take someone's hand. He would help one of his hands with the other to sustain the movement, to have some strength. What Erickson did, because he had less strength, is that his hand were shaked a little, because he needed to have strength in the wrist to do the handshake movement. What Erickson realized is that this type of movement originated a specific kind of touch that made the person confused. And so what I'm supposed to do now? I'm supposed to release my hand the hand goes up, the hand goes down. What am I supposed to do? So the person got confused, and that confusion with focused attention permitted that someone enter hypnosis. When Erickson realized that those kind of phenomena occur because of his lack of strength, he started to do that on purpose. He started to utilize his disability into a strength. And in that sense, the ambiguous touch is something that you can see Erickson do in a lot of tapes, a lot of demonstrations, a lot of old demonstrations where Erickson would grab someone's hand to start the catalepsy, or just to touch them ambiguously. So these type of inductions, the handshake inductions, really, they are a myth. There isn't an Ericksonian handshake induction. The ambiguous touch is something that occurs, that happened. First, it happened by mistake, but as Milton Erickson realized that he could utilize that kind of movement, he started to do that at a point that no one would want to shake Erickson's hands, because they were afraid that they could enter into hypnosis or something. The other myth, and probably my last myth, because I don't remember any more. Probably there is, but I'm not remembering now, is that the Ericksonian approach, especially Ericksonian hypnosis, was always the way that we do and practice nowadays. The permissive, the indirect style of doing hypnosis, the poetic style, the storytelling, the metaphors, and that's a myth. When Erickson started to learn hypnosis, he learned with Clark Hall and the traditionalists and the research-based therapists. So Erickson learned the direct and traditional approach. In his early years, Erickson was very direct, was very authoritative, and he utilized a lot the word sleep. Erickson did some things that were different. He tried to insert a more permissive, a more indirect style or indirect speech pattern to the patient, but in the early days he was very traditional. If you have the opportunity to see the early work of Erickson's early work, you might realize that is quite similar to traditional and semi-traditional styles of hypnosis. At the later years, after Erickson suffered the second polio attack, the second crisis, where his body and speech were terribly affected, Erickson had the necessity to change the way that he did hypnosis. So his condition really provided a way to alter his style, to alter the way that he did hypnosis, because he wasn't as direct and as strong and as authoritarian as he was before the second polio attack. He had to adapt to utilize more his speech patterns, to utilize more stories, to utilize more indirect suggestions or indirect ways of doing hypnosis. He couldn't grab someone's hand, he couldn't physically move the person to generate hypnotic phenomena. He could only utilize his speech, his way of talking. So in the later years, Erickson developed the hypnosis style that nowadays we all know as Ericksonian hypnosis. The more permissive, the more hypnotic pattern rich style of doing hypnosis. So it's a myth in the sense that Ericksonian hypnosis wasn't always this way. It evolved along the years. I would, well, in conclusion, I hope that you had the opportunity to learn something new, to maybe correct some myth or other about the Ericksonian approach to hypnosis and about Milton Erickson. And if you would like more of this content and more of these topics, hypnosis and psychotherapy, please subscribe. More videos are coming as we speak. So take care. I'll see you next time. Be safe. Be well.